Welcome back to the GCSE Maths Pro YouTube channel. Today's video is on the first part of ratios, where we'll be looking at how to simplify them and also how to share them out. So first of all, we'll look at just a couple of questions on simplifying. So here we have simplify the ratio 6 to 4. So you can almost imagine it's like a fraction. We've got the two numbers, same with the fraction, except they're just vertical, right? So if I'm simplifying it, I need to have a number that would divide equally into both sides of my ratio. In other words, a highest common factor, HCF. So in this case, they're obviously a lot smaller numbers, so it's a little bit easier. The only number that divides into both is 2. So I'm literally just going to divide both sides by 2. So obviously 6 divided by 2 is 3, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now, that is our answer. We can't simplify it further in this case because we want to have whole numbers in our ratio. 3 and 2 are whole numbers. If they've asked you specifically to write it with 1 as one of the sides, so like this for example, if they say at any point in any question, give your answer in the form n, or it could be a different letter, to 1, or it could be 1 to n, whichever way, they've got 1 on one of the sides and they've got a letter on the other that you're going to have to figure out, then yes, there is a chance that you'll end up with fraction decimal version. But if you're just simplifying, you only want whole numbers. So the answer would be 3 to 2. Let's say if we were to answer this question, so we've got 3 to 2, and then they want it in this form. I normally like to write ratios vertically so I can compare the sides. So do you see how we've currently, if we look at the right hand side, we've got 2, they actually want 1. So that's the side I'm going to focus on. How do I go from 2 to 1? Or any number to 1? We basically divide by itself, so in this case divide by 2. Now, whatever I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other, so I'm going to have to also divide my 3 by 2 to find n. So you can either write that as a fraction, which is 3 over 2, to 1, or you can write it as the decimal, which is 1.5 to 1. In this case, yeah, we've got a decimal or a fraction. That's fine because they've specifically asked to have it as something to 1. If they just say simplify, you need to have whole numbers. So the final answer for just simplifying the ratio is 3 to 2. So let's look at another one. This one here, we've now got a 3-part ratio. We can have as many parts in a ratio as we want, but normally it'll be 2, maybe 3. Simplifying ratios works the same way for any quantity of numbers. You just have to make sure that in this case there's 3 numbers. The number I'm going to divide by has to work for all 3 numbers here. So my highest common factor is for 3 numbers instead of 2. So it's quite easy in this case. I would say look for if you can recognize times tables. This one is clearly all 6 times tables, isn't it? So you could start there. You could also start, if you're not really sure, you can also always start, if they're all even numbers, by dividing by 2. And if you just keep halving it until the point where you obviously don't have even numbers, it might make it a bit smaller for you. But this one I can see I've got the 6 times table. So let's divide everything by 6 first and then see if that's what we're left with. So 24 divided by 6 is 4. 36 divided by 6 is 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. Now you might look at this and go, yeah, but I feel like I could do more with the first 2 numbers. But we can't do anything more because the 1 is the smallest it could actually be, isn't it? If we're sticking with whole numbers. So that is just the most simplified. If I've got a 3-part ratio, I have to simplify every number by the same factor. So all of them I divided by 6. And that would be your answer, 4 to 6 to 1. So that was just a bit on simplifying ratios. Now the main part of the video is going to be how to share out a ratio. So they would have given you the ratio, obviously, and also a total quantity that we want to divide into that ratio. So here we've got share out £120 into the ratio 1 to 5. So what we're going to do is, and it's the same every time, you're going to add the ratio parts together. Because we're saying, basically what we're saying is we've got 1 part on the left and then 5 parts on the right. So how many parts of my ratio do I have? Well, that's 6 parts, isn't it? Or you might want to call it something else, but I call them parts of a ratio. So I've got 6 parts I need to split it into. So we're going to take your total, which in this case is 120, and you're going to divide by however many are the total parts there. So that is 6. So 120 divided by 6 should give us 20. Now, what is that? What does the 20 mean? Because obviously we're looking to have 2 answers, aren't we? Well, that is, in this case, £20 per part of my ratio, because I've divided by 6. So do you see how that would be 20 for each of those 6 parts? So that's the middle bit. Now I'm coming back to my ratio because I want to get 2 answers. Whoever's on the left-hand side only has 1 part. So that side of the ratio, I'll write it again here, 1 to 5. That side of the ratio is going to be 1 times 20, isn't it? 1 part, which is just 20. The person who's on the right-hand side, who's getting 5 parts, is going to be 5 times 20, isn't it? So I had 1 times £20, which is obviously £20. And then we have 5 times £20 for the other side of my ratio, which is 100. And that's my ratios shared out, because if you check, you can always double check at the end. These two parts here, if you've got a 2-part ratio, should add together to make the original total. So 20 plus 100 is obviously 120, so that is correct. The other option is you can work out one side, and then let's say if I know, well, one side is 20, the other side has to just be the 120 minus 20, isn't it, which is 100. That's the other thing you can do. It's up to you. So basically a summary of that is you add the ratio together. This is step 1. Add the ratio together. You then, step 2, divide your total by that number of parts. Step 3, you then multiply whichever of the sides of the ratio you need. They might have only asked for one side of the ratio, in which case you only need to work out one. They might have asked for 2 in this case. They want to know both. You multiply the number of parts by this figure here, which in this case was 20. And then obviously your answer is the final bit here, 20 and 100. So let's look at another one. So it says, share out 63 sweets between Aidan and Beth in the ratio 3:4. So the first thing to note here is we've got some names now, 3:4. Who is who? You basically go with the order that they've been written. So Aidan was mentioned first, which means he's going to be the 3 side, and Beth was mentioned second, so she's going to be the 4 side. So 3 for Aidan, 4 for Beth. Now, exactly the same thing. We've got a total number of sweets. We need to share them between 2 people. So first of all, I'm going to add them together, which gives me 7 parts of my ratio. Then I'm going to take my total, which is 63 sweets, divide it by how many parts there are, which is 7. So that gives me 9 sweets. In this case, 9 sweets per part of my ratio. And therefore, they've said share it out between Aidan and Beth, which means I do want to know how many Aidan gets and how many Beth gets. So I need to work out both sides. So then I'm going to do 3 parts for Aidan. So 3 times 9 sweets, which gives me 27 sweets. That is for Aidan. Now, as I said before, you can either do 4 times 9 to get Beth, or you can just subtract 63 and 27. It's up to you. I actually find the multiplication easier, I think, in this case. But if you have a calculator, whichever you prefer. So Beth is 4 parts, and obviously per part we get 9 sweets. So for those 4 parts, she gets 9 sweets for each part. That is 36 sweets for Beth. And as I said before, you can double check. These 2 values here should add together to make the total 63. And then you know you're correct. Or if you don't get them to add up, something's gone wrong. Okay, so that's the answer to that one. Okay, so we've got a similar one again now, but as you can see, the only difference is we've now got 3 people, or in other words, a 3-part ratio. So Anna, Ben and Cameron share 84 pens in the ratio 2:3:7. So as I said before, you're going to write the names, or if you want to use initials, in the same order and match them up in the same order as your ratio. So the 2 parts is for Anna, Ben has got 3 parts, and Cameron has got 7 parts. So we're going to work it out, though, in exactly the same way as we did the 2-part ratios. So we're going to start by adding up the ratio. Obviously, the only difference here is that we're adding all 3 numbers and not just 2 of them. So 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 7 is 12. So in total, we have 12 parts in our ratio. And then from here on, it's pretty much the same thing. So the total number is 84 pens. Divide it by how many parts we have, which is 12. That gives us 7 pens per part. And now they've asked us to find out basically all 3 of them, haven't they? So we are just going to do exactly the same as before. We're going to multiply the number of pens per part with the number of parts for all 3. So Anna is going to be 2 times 7 pens, which is 14. We've got Ben, who's going to be 3 times 7, which gives me 21. And finally, Cameron is 7 times 7, which is 49. And again, you can double check. These, all 3 of them together, should add up to 84. Okay, so if you've got a 3-part ratio, it's still exactly the same method, so don't panic if you see that. Okay, so this is our last question. It does look like a little bit of a different format now because we've got a table. We've also got ratio mixed with another topic, which tends to be quite common in the exams. You might not just have a purely ratio question, you could have it mixed with pretty much any topic really. A lot of the time, like we've got here, for example, we've got probability as well. So Anya has yellow, purple and green marbles. The number of yellow marbles to the number of green marbles is in this ratio 2:7. So we've got yellow to green. Work out the probability of getting a green marble. So you can see here we've been given the probability of purple, and then the yellow and the green are whatever's left in this ratio. So initially we don't have this total to be shared out, do we? That's what we need. We need to be given what's the total of the probability of yellow and probability of green, so that then we can share out that ratio between the two of them. So this first bit is more so to do with probability. When we get tables of probabilities, normally we have to remember that we've got that all of this should add up to 1, because Anya only has yellow, purple and green, right? Those are the only options. So the probability of picking a yellow or a purple or a green is 100%, isn't it? There's definitely a chance you're going to get one of those 3 colours. So all of these 3 boxes should add up to 1. Now, I'm not going to share out the 1, or 100% if you prefer to use that, because I also need to include my purple. And this ratio only talks about yellow and green. So first of all, I need to basically get rid of the purple out of this consideration. So you can use decimals as it is, you can use percentages if you like, if you prefer to think of this as 100%, or just 100, and then therefore this one has to be 19%, doesn't it? However you prefer to do it, I think, yeah, let's use that so we don't have to use the decimals. So 100 minus 19, if you've got a calculator it might be easier to stick with decimals, but if not, we'll do it this way, which gives us 81. So what we're saying is that yellow and green together, there's an 81% chance of picking a yellow or a green. Now that we've isolated that, you can almost forget about the percentage, just think of it as 81. I want to share out 81 into the ratio 2 to 7. So we're going to do the same thing as before, where we're going to add together the ratio. So 2 plus 7 is 9, which means there's 9 parts to my ratio. 81 divided by the number of parts. So we get 81 divided by 9, which is 9. So that means 9, in this context, 9% per part of my ratio. Or if you did it using a decimal, you should get 0.09 per part of your decimal. Now, they've only asked for green, so I don't actually have to work out the yellow. You obviously can, but I don't need to. So I'm just going to look at the green. The green side is 7 parts. So to find green, I just need to do 7 times either my 9% or my decimal, 0.09. So that should give me 63%, or as a decimal, 0.63. Okay, so work out the probability of getting a green marble. Well, that's your answer, either 63% or 0.63. They've given theirs in decimals, so I would probably be more inclined to leave it as a decimal at the end. And if you wanted to know, obviously then the yellow would be 2 times 9, which is 18, or 0.18. So it could be in a different format, and it could also be mixed with different topics, but the logic there, the gist was still the same. So thanks for watching that video on the introduction into ratio. So the second one is for when we haven't been given a total, like we were in this video, but we might be either given one value, so one side of the ratio, and we want to work out the other side, or we're given the difference between the 2 parts of the ratio. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave down below any questions or comments that you might have.